Hi there, it's Emma, and welcome to this episode of Sax Bites, the 5-minute saxophone lesson podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about buying a saxophone for an intermediate player. So this advice is aimed at someone who is maybe in high school or middle school in the US, because I do have quite a few US listeners. So I want to talk about that student that maybe isn't looking at pursuing saxophone as a career or doing saxophone at university, but is a really solid player, has worked hard, and is wanting to have an instrument that's a bit of a level up from their beginner horn. When I'm talking to parents and students about buying an instrument for an intermediate player, what I'm looking for is I want them to get an instrument that is going to elevate their playing. And what happens is, and I alluded to this in my buying for a beginner video, is they purchase a great horn and keep their beginner mouthpiece on it. So actually the first thing I recommend before you buy an intermediate horn is to upgrade your mouthpiece particularly. So for me, that means moving to something that is, maybe a standard, like a Selma C Star for the classical side of things, or maybe like a Maya 5 on the jazz side of things, and looking to get a mouthpiece that is going to give them a wider range of sounds, a wider range of tone colors, and let them really advance and mature their sound. In doing so, they might need to go to a slightly harder reed. You probably, if you're an intermediate player, you might be sitting around the size 3.5 size reed. And if you're not, when you do get that better mouthpiece and upgrade your mouthpiece, you're probably going to need to upgrade your reed as well. So when we're looking at then buying a horn, so you've upgraded your mouthpiece, ligature reed combo, and you're sounding really good there. What we want to do next is we then want to look at an instrument that's going to give us what we need to tackle some of the bigger repertoire and to handle some of the bigger challenges you might have in your more advanced bands, in your youth music programs. You might be auditioning for a youth orchestra or, a representative program. Where I live in Brisbane, we have something called SHEP, which is an ensemble program that students can get into where you want to sound good. You're going to go play with other good young musicians. So in that case, I look for an intermediate model saxophone that gives the biggest bang for their buck. And I'm wanting something that makes sure they have, for example, a high F sharp key, if they didn't have that on their beginner horn. I'm looking for something that it has a really good tone color. So I definitely recommend, even at the intermediate level, heading into a music store and seeing if you can play test. And this is where you might start choosing an instrument based on your based on your genre preference. So it's not really essential, but if I have a student that is really gung-ho about classical music or really intense about jazz music, I might direct them to actually start looking at horns that have a tendency to be played one or the other. So definitely at a professional level, you would be choosing a horn that connects with your preference. And I mean, all of this to say, you can play everything on every horn, but if you know that you're playing in your only jazz bands at school and you love jazz, choosing a horn that has a brighter tone color, that has the sound that you want, is going to make your life easier. I definitely don't recommend just everyone playing the same Selma saxophone with the same reed and the same mouthpiece. You do, at this level, you can make those choices and you can work with your teacher. You don't have to just play something because that famous saxophone player plays that instrument. You can play something because it suits you and suits your interests. So another thing that I look for is resale value. Again, I touched on this a little bit in the beginner horn video, but at these lower levels, there is a likelihood that you might sell your saxophone down the line. So with this horn here, this one I've had since I was 17 years old. It was my first pro saxophone, my first pro alto. I don't think I will ever get rid of this. I wasn't thinking resale value when I bought this. I was thinking this is my forever horn, and I'll do a separate episode on forever horns. But at this level, there might be a chance that, you finish school, you're not playing in as many ensembles, you wake up and it's been 10 years and you haven't played it and you want to sell it. So buying an instrument that has a good resale value and working with the music shops that you go to purchase an instrument that has good resale value, and you're working with those people that know in the shop, is going to help you in the long run. It's going to make sure you get the best bang for your buck. I also think while for a beginner horn, you may not need to really play test anything or go in, I do recommend going into your local music store and trying out intermediate instruments. Even though you technically could just purchase an intermediate level horn from a quality brand, you're starting to get up there money-wise. You're starting to spend a decent amount of money on a saxophone. So you want to make sure that you like it, you like the way it feels, and that your teacher is happy with the instrument that you chose. So I do recommend for an intermediate horn going in and play testing. And finally, with an intermediate instrument and a professional instrument, I will recommend this in the next episode, you want to make sure that you understand the tuning of your horns. So I really like to go in whenever I'm helping a student purchase an instrument, have a tuner there and do some playing on it and have a look at the nature of the instrument that you're buying. Sometimes horns can have a little bit of some little idiosyncrasies, some little things about them that you want to tackle head on and know what you're purchasing. So if you're able to try an instrument that you like, make sure you're checking it with a tuner to make sure it's going to be something that you're going to enjoy playing. Because at the end of the day, an investment like this, you want to choose something that you're going to really, really love playing. Okay, that's been my advice on purchasing an intermediate model saxophone. Until next time, this has been Sax Bites, the 5-minute saxophone lesson podcast. Bye-bye.